everyone, my name is Dana Walton and I'm here with Cheryl Evans, who's the REEP Program Manager at REEP Green Solutions. She's here today to present an intro to rain and stormwater credits, and she's going to help us save a few dollars on those bills of ours. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks, Dana. I'm really happy to be here. And it's exciting for me to know that this webinar can be heard throughout the next year by anyone who's interested. So I don't know when you might hear, but whenever you do, I hope this information is helpful to you. So by listening to this webinar and getting in touch with me, there will be information at the end about an email you can reach me at. You'll have the chance to fill out a simple follow-up survey and then circulate some materials to your staff or your students. And that way you will get, that way you will get an education credit that will get you 5% off of your stormwater fee for your business. Here you go. Thank you. So just a quick agenda. I'll be speaking for about 50 minutes today, and the agenda is as follows. I'm going to introduce REEP and the RAIN program. I'm going to talk about what the stormwater problem is, the history of the stormwater utility and the credits in Kitchener and Waterloo, stormwater management at home, stormwater management at work, some interesting examples of what you can do where you work, and also I'll just talk a little bit about the evaluation process and how you move on to the next step. So first of all, not everyone has heard of REEP, but REEP has been around for 15 years. We are an environmental not-for-profit organization. We were founded in 1999 by the University of Waterloo and the Alora Center for Environmental Excellence. We have a mission to work together to make sustainability the norm. Most people know of us through our home energy evaluation work that we've done. In KW and Cambridge, we've done over 14,000 home energy evaluations. So we still do those evaluations, and we also provide energy evaluations to low-income households in the form of a program called the Home Assistance Program. We have a 90-year-old demonstration house that demonstrates energy, water, and stormwater efficiency called REEP House. It's at 20 Mill. You can visit us. I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. And we also have 2 water programs. Well Aware is a program that helps non-farm rural well owners to figure out how to keep their well water clean and help it keep it flowing in enough quantity to be useful to you. And then finally, the program I'm talking about today is RAIN. So RAIN is a stormwater education program. It's known as an ecological approach to stormwater management because it's asking people to think beyond concrete and mechanical systems for managing and filtering stormwater. It looks at taking some cues from nature and using that to integrate into simple systems that we can put on our properties to manage volume and pollution of our water. Now, RAIN is pretty exciting because it's a national program developed by Green Communities Canada. They are a not-for-profit environmental charity, and they take a look at, across Canada, what are some big issues that are coming up that need to be solved, and they develop programs, and then local delivery agents deliver them in their specific communities. So RAIN is a national program delivered now in 10 communities across Canada, and I have the pleasure of facilitating the delivery of this program in Kitchener and Waterloo and in Cambridge as well. Now, the RAIN program goals are quite lofty, and I'm sure you can understand that they are important and they will take quite a while and a lot of collaboration to achieve. The first is to protect and enhance ground and surface water quality. We have to make sure there's water that's good for fishing, for transportation, as well as for drinking. We need to really take care of our groundwater because we know that 80% of our groundwater, 80% of our drinking water comes from the ground. We want to reduce the risk of urban flooding. This is a program that's focused on urban areas. We really want to make sure that highways and homes and business basements essentially are not flooded. The way we do that is by educating property owners to help them understand what they can do to make changes on their own properties to benefit the whole. We also want people to record their achievements by applying for stormwater utility credits in Kitchener and Waterloo. It's our most accurate way of gauging the trends that we're achieving in our community. Is our stormwater, are our volumes going down? Are our pollution levels going down? We can see the trends by people applying for credits. And it also, of course, helps your bottom line. Now, because Kitchener and Waterloo were the first utilities in Canada, stormwater utilities that were developed, and we have a first program where a municipality and a not-for-profit is working together to spread the messaging, we have created a very unique delivery model here that's now being considered for replication in other municipalities across Canada. So a little bit of a backgrounder about what stormwater is and what the problem is. The way I like to start is to ask people to think about when they're going for a walk in a forest, because we take a lot of our cues from natural systems. Excuse me. So in a natural system, such as a forest, if there's a light rainstorm going on, you're not getting a big torrential downpour on your head. You're getting little drips of water. The water is held by individual leaves. When it's heavy enough, the leaves sort of hang down and drip small quantities of water onto the ground. And that water is slowly infiltrated into the ground, where it goes through, leaf litter, it goes through soil, it goes through sand, and the pollutants are filtered out. And as well, the bacteria can eat some of those pollutants. That water slowly filters down and recharges our groundwater for drinking, and it also slowly makes its way laterally to recharge our rivers. So if there is a really big rainstorm, you'll see a small increase in the level of water in the river, but you won't see a huge increase because everything is moving so slowly. And also, if there hasn't been a rainstorm for a while, you'll still see that the water levels are quite consistently high in the rivers because of this regular recharging of the rivers from groundwater. So that's the way it works in nature. But as we've changed the natural systems and removed a lot of them in cities, removed our wetlands, our forests, and our meadowlands, there is less area for that water to infiltrate. What we put up instead is a lot of very hard surfaces that are known as impermeable surfaces, such as rooftops or parking lots, driveways, and roads. So in a system, say that's built before 1990, the engineering wisdom of the day was to get water to hit those hard surfaces and move off of properties as soon as possible to prevent flooding of houses and businesses. As a result, the land that was built before 1990 has all been graded and set up so that the water moves quickly into roads. The water then moves into storm sewers and goes through pipes under the ground, the storm sewers, and is dumped directly into the rivers without any pollution controls. So compared to a natural system, when you have a heavy rain in the city with lots of hard surface, you can see lots of water moving quickly with lots of pollutants. You can see very high river levels. Sometimes you'll see flooding, roads washed out. And during times of drought, you'll see very low water levels because there's not a lot of groundwater recharge to keep the river levels regular and constant. Now, so those are the big changes. And overall, the impacts of those changes fall into a few different categories. In this program, we talk a lot about water quantity, so how much, and water quality, how good is that water. So when you have a lot of hard surfaces and intense rains, you can end up with flooding of rivers, flooding of foundations, flooding of parking lots, and also in your rivers, when the water is moving quickly, you can get increased erosion, so you get that water that looks like hot chocolate. I'm sure you've all seen it. In terms of water quality, you're seeing that discolored water as well moving on the roads, making its way into the storm sewer, into the river. So that carries with it bacteria, fertilizer, pesticide, drips from cars, etc. So that polluted water is making its way into the rivers, so it can reduce the surface water quality as well as groundwater quality if that water is flowing into the ground. And if you get high levels of bacteria that are being pulled into beaches, then that can sometimes close beaches because they're unsafe for swimming. Now, one of the big challenges with cities, particularly the areas that were built before 1990, is that we've got our pipes and our roadways and our river corridors all sized for weather patterns up till about 1990. But with the increase of climate change, you're going to see more frequent and intense storms. So a storm that would have normally come once every 100 years sometimes is coming once every 30 years now. So the pipes that we've got and the riverbeds that we've got to handle these lesser storms, they're getting overwhelmed more often by these bigger and more intense storms. So another challenge with the municipal pipes, ponds, river corridors, known as infrastructure in Ontario, is that a lot of these updates to these systems, or the building of these systems, was done, say in the 50s and 60s. And a lot of this infrastructure has about a 50-year lifespan. So you can imagine there's a lot of maintenance that's going to be required to update these old systems. So the Environmental Commissioner of Ontario, in his 2014 report, said that Ontario-wide, Ontario municipalities are looking at a $6.8 billion infrastructure debt. So all the municipalities across Ontario, in order to upgrade their storm sewers that are under their roads, in order to dredge their stormwater management ponds, they're in a deficit situation of $6.8 billion, and that's very significant. Now, in Kitchener and Waterloo, we were the first municipalities in Canada to decide that it was important to take action to try to deal with this deficit, this debt problem. So what's been explained to me is that each property at the residential and non-residential level had been assigned taxes from the general tax base to help support a wide variety of things. And so one of the pots of money that would be pulled out of that general pool of money would be for managing stormwater and fixing old infrastructure. But every year there had to be a renegotiation with all the other players that wanted that money as well. So it provided unstable and often too low a level of funding to maintain our stormwater infrastructure and to update where necessary. So after many years of public consultation, I think it's about 4 years, in 2010 the City of Kitchener and the City of Waterloo approved a stormwater utility rate. That was a way that they would assign a fee for every property based on the amount of stormwater that it contributed to the storm sewer. So big properties contributed a lot of water and had to pay a bigger fee, and small properties contributed a smaller amount and had to pay a smaller fee. In February 2011, customers were first issued their stormwater utility bills, and in May 2011, public consultation about a credit policy started. They wanted to hear from homeowners and business owners about what they thought would be a fair level for credits and what they would be able to do to get credits. So in January 2012, a credit policy was approved, and in 2012, the utility credit application was launched, and that was when people were able to start applying for credits. And really that's when the major partnership with the REEP program started, right around there, because the cities wanted some support to get the word out about stormwater utility and the credits. And fortunately, there was a significant grant that was made available through the Ontario Ministry of the Environment Showcasing Water Innovation Fund. So that really did help a lot. Over the years, REEP has been involved in residential outreach, and we did a little bit of non-residential or business outreach in 2013, but we really started to focus on that in 2014, and that's part of the reason I'm here. Okay, so one of the things I like to do is just talk to people about some of the problems that they have at home with stormwater, and then later talk about some of the problems that they have in business, because everybody lives somewhere. So you're working somewhere, you're living somewhere, and you need to think about how water is moving on both of those properties and how you can protect yourself and protect rivers. So you see in these pictures a few different scenes. The one on the bottom left is a pile of leaves, and that pile of leaves is over top of a storm drain in the street, so it's blocking that storm drain. There might be a problem there because your street might fill up like a bathtub if that stays plugged. Sometimes water will move into your basement, leaving flooding. Sometimes your eaves troughs are plugged up with leaves so they can't do their job and the water is overflowing. And sometimes you have good intentions like setting up a rain barrel, but sometimes the setup is not correct, or you just don't have enough rain barrels set up in series to collect all the water, so you end up with erosion and the water just going into the storm sewer anyway. So when you ask people about all these questions about where their problems are, the main categories are in water quantity and quality, and these are the main challenges that people have. Wet basements are a common problem. Sometimes when downtowns have storm sewers and drains together, like the toilet drains together, if there's a large influx of storm water, then you can get the sanitary sewer backing up and going into people's basements, which is very unpleasant. There's a lot of water washing over your soil, you can get erosion. If that water is making its way onto hard surfaces, paved surfaces in the winter, it freezes, then you end up with the risk of slips and falls. In terms of water quality, you have to think that everything that you put on your property has the opportunity to be washed away by water. It tends to grab things and move it along. So for some people, they are washing their cars in their driveways, and all of the drips from the oil and the soap from washing, that is making its way directly into the storm sewer in the river. Some people have leaks and drips from their cars for not being maintained. Some people are not picking out pet waste. There's also fertilizer and pesticide challenges, and a lot of people who have challenges managing their water end up using a lot of salt to try to reduce their risk. So as we talked about before, the program takes a lot of cues from nature. So our main messages are similar to the ones that I was talking about in that forest scenario. We want to slow that water down, we want to soak it up, and we want to keep it clean. So in terms of really practical things you can do at home, you can slow that water down by grabbing it once it's coming out of a downspout, and you can put it into a rain barrel or a very large barrel called a cistern. You can attach that to, say, a soaker hose, or you can put a pump on it so you can irrigate your lawn or your gardens easily. And that way that water is held for a while and then has a chance to slowly soak in. Another really important thing that we need to think about is that we used to have a lot of forests in this area, and one of the best ways to try to restore some of the natural stormwater function in the city is to take care of existing trees and to plant new trees. The next thing we like to talk about is soak it up. So how can we soak up that rain? So if we've got downspouts, we can direct them, like I said, to a rain barrel and have that water slowly drip out and soak into the ground. We can also use an interesting type of paving. You can see on the bottom photo there, there's a photo of me pouring water on top of what just looks like an interlocking paver driveway, but it's actually permeable interlocking concrete pavers. So in between each paver, there's a little bit extra space compared to a regular paving system. And in between, instead of a sealant type of product, there is actually just chipped stone. So the water is able to flow down in between the cracks, in between the space in between the stones. And then underneath, there's about 18 inches of washed stone, where that water can be held temporarily and then soak into the ground. So there's that type of paver. There's also permeable asphalt and permeable concrete, as well as a plastic grid type of system. All of the common thing is that all of them you can walk on or drive on, and they let the water through, and then underneath you have about 18 inches of washed stone that has essentially a reservoir for water to be held and to infiltrate. You can also design natural areas to maximize infiltration. So you can take your downspout and you can direct it to a garden that's shaped like a bowl that will hold water and soak it into the ground. You have a lot of sand in the soil and plants that are very tough and are okay with having their feet wet for about 24 to 48 hours, and then after that they're also drought tolerant. So a garden that's shaped like a bowl and is really tough is called a rain garden. That's a really great thing to consider. And if you're planting any type of garden, it's really important to think about putting mulch on your soil, because just having mulch on your soil slows down the water that lands on it and allows it to soak in to prevent runoff. The last thing is just to consider what you're putting on the ground before you put it on there. So if you've got pet waste, you can pick that up. You can put it in a composter with the region, or you can do your own pet waste composter at home. If you've got fuels or solvents, you can make sure that those are stored properly so that they're not going to have any drips or opportunity to move into the driveway to get washed away. You can try to reduce your amount of fertilizer or pesticide, and you can take your car to a commercial car wash, and that way the water will all be filtered and all the guck will be taken away and put in a toxic landfill site. Something that's really interesting too is if you have downspouts that are going onto a hard surface, you can get them off of there and get the water going somewhere that will soak it up, so you won't need as much salt to begin with in the winter. So in order to give people credit for the good work that they're doing, in order to also track what people are up to see if we're trending up or trending down, the city makes it very, very simple to apply for a credit at home. So all you do is you go on one time onto the city stormwater site. It's easy to just Google Kitchener or Waterloo stormwater. You just bring your water bill, you have your utility number, you put it in, and then you basically say what you have on your property. So do you have one rain barrel? Do you have a little rain garden? Do you have permeable paving? You punch that in. It will calculate your credit for you, and it will assign that credit to you on an ongoing basis. They do have students that come around in the summer for 10% of participants, just as a spot check, but you can assume that for most people, once you apply, that is your ongoing credit until you apply again, maybe, and say that you've done more so you can get a bigger credit. The amount of stormwater fee you pay is based on the size of your lot and the amount of hard surface. So you can see in Waterloo the rates are a little bit lower, anywhere from $42 to $140 per year. In Kitchener, they're from $71 to $156 per year. So it's really very simple. Say you have 3 rain barrels. Each rain barrel is usually about 200 liters. So you just punch in 3 rain barrels. The system will calculate that you catch 600 liters per rainfall event. And so it will assume that you get 20% credit in Kitchener, or between 9 and 18 in Waterloo, probably more like 15 in Waterloo. If you have something like a rain garden, it will ask you what's the size of the roof that is catching this water, what's the size of your garden. And you'll punch that in, it will calculate the volume that you're getting from that, and it will tell you your credits. If you have, say, an infiltration gallery, which is a big box that you put under the ground to catch water, the city would likely have already notified you that you had one of those built with your house. So you can just use that information to get a full 45% credit with the fees. Or if you've got permeable paving, you can show the area, the size of the driveway and the construction, and then you'll get your 45% as well. As with anything, the most important thing to do in preventing problems is to be ready. So try to make sure that these things don't happen. It's easier to prevent than to clean up, and a lot cheaper too. So there's some very simple tips. If you have eaves troughs at home, and almost everybody does, just make sure that the downspouts are extended 8 feet from your foundation where possible. You have to keep that water away from your foundation. Also direct those downspouts onto an absorbent area. So grass is fine, but you could also consider an infiltration gallery or a rain garden. If you've got rain girls, make sure that they're drained on a regular basis before rain so you're not getting overflow. And in the winter, make sure to disconnect them and drain them and reconnect your downspout and keep that, like I said, 8 feet from the foundation so the water's not coming back in. In your eaves troughs, if they're plugged with debris, then they can't do their job, so make sure that they're unplugged each season. And if you have old eaves troughs, sometimes even though there's no debris in them, they still may have leaks, so the joints may be kind of coming apart. You can repair or replace them. With your foundation, you can look for cracks and repair those. And a really inexpensive start to dealing with foundation issues is to get some soil and regrade around your home so the soil is sloping away and the water will move away. I've done that on my own house. It cost a couple $100, and that was all that we needed to do to keep the water from coming in. In your basement, if you have a sump pump, that's great to help deal with water coming in. But one of the tricks is during, for example, heavy storms where you would need your sump pump, sometimes the electricity goes out. So if you have a battery backup, that will ensure that your sump pump will keep working even when the power is out. Also, the insurance companies like to say it's not if your basement floods, it's when it floods. So just take a do a little visual of what would it look like if your basement had an inch of water in it. So can you have furniture that just has wooden legs, for example? Can you store your basement items off the floor? Can you consider doing your flooring in the basement something like tile so that if it gets wet, you just mop it up, it doesn't get damaged? Something like that is really important potential money saver. And in terms of trees, we have to work hard to keep our trees in good shape and to prune them and make sure that they're healthy so that when there's extra wind or extra ice storms that are also more common because of climate change, that those trees are not at risk of damaging our properties. So maintaining good health in trees is very important. Okay, so now on to some stormwater problems at work. Depending on where you work and what type of setup your site has, you can have all kinds of different challenges. There are heavy floods sometimes that will hit your parking lot. There are downspouts that you can see on the left hand side that are just very close to the foundation. And this picture's on this site is on a bit of a slope, so they get melt water coming down here and flowing all the way down the driveway, and they have a lot of ice challenges. So they're now looking at solutions with the REEP program for next spring. And of course, if you're having ice problems, you also are concerned about slips and falls, so you want to make sure you're managing to keep people safe, but you also want to minimize the amount of salt to keep our water healthy. So the two main groups that these challenges fall into, again, go into quality and quantity. In terms of quantity, issues like basement flooding, parking lot flooding, water pooling on your roof from clogged roof drains, say like on a flat roof. You can have leaking and increased flood risk from ceiling drips. And if you are having drainage issues, you can have increased slips and falls because of the ice building up on hard surfaces. In terms of quality, in newer areas, quite a few buildings have oil and grit separators, but often they're not maintained properly. So the little system that's set to filter out oil and grit, it basically gets full, and all that oil and grit is just going down into the storm sewer and the river anyway. Parking lots have a lot of grit on them, and if that grit is not swept regularly, that ends up in the river too. And of course, quality, we talk about salt a lot. Okay, so the cities have set up a slightly different credit system for businesses. You can still get up to 45% credit on your monthly stormwater fee, but it's set up with a few different categories. One is quantity, so you can get a 25% quantity credit. There's 15% you can get for quality, and 5% as well for educating people, because one of the most important things about this program is spreading the word. So if we can use the credits to help spread the word in the community, then that's something very important the credits will be achieving. Unlike the residential credit, you need to apply once per year for the business credits. One of the reasons is because there are systems on business properties that the cities want to make sure that you're maintaining. And you see down below that there is quite a difference in the rates that are charged in Waterloo and Kitchener. Kitchener is at a full cost recovery rate, so all the money they take in supports all the work that they do. And Waterloo, they're slowly working on increasing their rates to that full cost recovery. They're not there yet, and they have to work with their council in order to decide what higher rates might be necessary, but they're not at full cost yet. Okay, so in terms of the credits, quantity is the highest amount of credit you can get. So that's basically how much water you're catching and slowing down. So you will get a full 25% credit if you catch all of the water on your rooftop and your parking lot. And different ages of properties have different controls in place because over time, planning requirements and building code has changed. Before 1985, there were no quantity controls that were required when you're building a property, so you're not going to get, not likely going to get a credit for what you've already got on your property. You're going to have to work a bit harder. After 1985, it's very common that people would have flat roofs with rooftop storage on them. So you just see this little, almost like a little grate, and then the drains on the roof have a little flow restrictor. So when it rains, the rooftops are designed to hold a little bit of water. They have a liner that goes up along the side, so it's almost like a little bathtub concept. You'll get a little bit of water standing on the roof for a while, and then it will slowly flow down into the storm sewer in the river. And as in a natural system, it's mimicking a natural system because it will slowly release that water, so you get more regular river levels. So anyone after 1985 will likely have rooftop controls and be able to get that credit. After 1990, a lot more requirements came in. So quantity control ponds are common. They basically look like almost like a pond that just has grass in it. So it's the right shape. It's kind of a bowl shape, but it just has grasses. Sometimes they're mowed, sometimes they're not. Excuse me. With parking lots, parking lot storage became common. So you can either have flow restrictors on your parking lot drains, which would mean that you get a little bit of standing water in your parking lot, and then it would slowly drain out. Or you can have large chambers under the parking lot that hold a lot of water and then slowly release that. Rooftop storage we already talked about. Infiltration galleries take storm water from downspouts from roofs and are underneath the ground and hold water and store it temporarily until it infiltrates into the ground. So that's a common one you can get cash back for as well. Now, if you have an older property built before 1985 or you're thinking of a new build, these are some of the things that you can consider to get an increased amount of quantity credit. So you can put an infiltration gallery into your design or your retrofit. You can use rain gardens to soak up parking lot water or rooftop water. You can do rainwater harvesting. There's a lot of interest in rainwater harvesting because you get a credit for stormwater, but you also reduce the amount of potable water you're using and save a lot of money. There are there's a great incentive program through the region of Waterloo called the REEP Program. So if your business is looking at saving money by reducing the amount of potable water you're using, you can talk to them at the region of Waterloo to see if they can get a grant to you to help with some engineering consulting fees around that. And you'll also receive cash back for the volume of water you're actually saving for that year. Another option to consider is permeable paving, which we talked about. And green roofs are great to slow down water, soak it up, keep your buildings cool, etc. But at this point, Waterloo only gives a credit for that in terms of quantity. Okay, the next is quality. So how clean is that water? For the purposes of the credit, it's only parking lot water that's considered dirty and a concern. So rooftop water is not part of this calculation. So if you, for example, manage all of your parking lot water for quality, then you'll get 100% credit. And as with the quantity credits, different ages of properties have different controls in place, according to what was required at the time of construction. So before 1990, you're pretty much out of luck. There were no quality control measures that were required as part of the actual facility. But after 1990, you'll see things like stormwater quality ponds. So those are the wet ponds with standing water. You'll see vegetated swales and vegetated filter struts. They're essentially ditches with plants in them that hold water and soak the water in, and then the plants also help to clean the water. In parking lots, you'll look inside the drains in the parking lot, and you'll see a little filter in the top, and that will tell you that there's an oil grit separator there. So you can use these types of things to get up to 15% credit on your stormwater bill. Now, for quality purposes, for quality credits for buildings of all ages, you can do some maintenance-related things too. I was mentioning that grit from parking lots is a source of pollution. So if you submit a paved area sweeping plan, which is basically an outline of how you sweep your parking lot, how often you do it, who does it, and how that the resulting waste is disposed of, you can submit that to the city for a credit. Also, if you have a salt management plan for your site, if you hire a Smart About Salt contractor or your facilities manager is Smart About Salt certified, then you submit a plan that says, these are the main things we're doing to reduce salt use. This is what we've applied this year. Here's my signature. Send that in, and you'll get a credit of, for each of these, it's 5% for quality. The last credit is really very easy to get and really very important. I was mentioning before, one of the big purposes of having the utility and the credits in the first place is to make things better. So we need people who understand the challenges and are ready to do something about it and will share the word. So the education credit, the goal of that is to educate people. For non-school properties, you have managers, facility supervisors attending a workshop and then circulating the materials to their employees. And you do that once a year. The workshop needs to be about an hour. For school properties, they ask that institutions have 4 hours of education per year, and that you circulate those posters and information to staff and students. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. A lot of supports on the city website. It's a nice, easy, and really important credit that people can get. So this is an example of a property in Kitchener that got some credits for work that they were doing. So this site was built around 2000, so a lot of these things that they have on the site were required as part of the site development process. So you can see in terms of quality, we're only looking at the parking lot because that's only the water that's considered dirty. So you can see the red lines are the dirty water. They're going into the little pink circles, which are essentially the drains in the parking lot. They're all being conveyed to the top right, which is a pond. So this pond is gathering this water for quality. So all of that dirty water is settling in that pond. The dirty material settles out, and the clean material carries over into a storm drain that makes its way to the river. So because they've managed 100% of their water of their parking lot, they get a full 15% credit for that. In terms of quantity, you're required to manage all of the water from your rooftop and your parking lot to get the full credit. So that's what they've done. The pond that they have that's managing storm water from their parking lot is also a quantity pond. So it not only filters out materials or settles materials, it also holds enough water when there's a storm to protect the river. So that gets the full credit. And the rooftop water, the roofs have flow restrictors on them, and then that water flows into what's represented by a blue box, and that's an infiltration gallery. So that's a big box under the ground that's soaking up water. Any overflow just makes its way to the pond. So altogether, they get the full quality and the full quantity credit. They save $1,828 per year at current rates, and the reason they are not getting their last 5% credit is because they haven't done an education seminar. So that's just the simple thing they need to do, and then they'll be at the 45% credit for the year. Okay, so some of these concepts are sort of broad and general, and sometimes it's good to have some concrete examples of what people are talking about. Now, keep in mind that every site is unique and every solution is unique. So on your site, you're going to have your own challenges and your own styles and your own interest in and budget, so you're going to have a unique solution. But I just wanted to show some examples of what others have done to potentially inspire you. In Victoria, BC, a school had a parking lot that was an older parking lot, so it was draining all towards sort of the right side of the parking lot here. I believe there was a drain and a catch basin, and so what they decided to do was plug that catch basin and then just make simple curves at the end of the parking lot, so when the water came, it was no longer going into the catch basin, but it would flow in between the curves and flow into essentially this long, beautiful ditch called a bioswale. So that manages quantity. It's gathering the water from the parking lot, but it's also cleaning that water by filtering it and filtering it through the soil, and also the plants are filtering that soil too with their roots and with the bacteria in the soil. So that type of solution qualifies for quantity and quality credit. Another simple local example is a bioswale that is in strips of the parking lot in the Core Group Inc. property in Waterloo on the Tech campus. There are 3 bioswales, and the water all flows into essentially this grassy area and is filtered. So it is getting quality and quantity control for that parking lot. The maintenance that they do on that is to mow that in the spring, and then off it goes. A lot of organizations are very interested in rainwater harvesting, like I said, because it qualifies for stormwater credits as well as a regional credit if applicable, and you save money on potable water. So there are below ground options. You can have very large systems, or you can have above ground systems that are very small. And because that's only managing quantity, that qualifies for a quantity control credit. A really interesting example that's local is from Kitchener Waterloo Collegiate and Vocational School. They took some permeable paving that I was talking about, so the water will flow through it, but they wanted to gather water underneath it. So they used infiltration gallery boxes and stone underneath to create a nice stable system underneath the permeable paving, but they also lined it with a pond liner. So the water in this case that's flowing from a ditch that is at the side of a football field, it used to just flow down the ditch and into a storm sewer and into the river, but now it flows down that ditch and into this permeable paving, essentially a catchment area. And at the end of the permeable paving, there's an opening with a pump in it, and that they're able to pump the 10,000 liters out of that system to irrigate the trees and the shrubs that the students maintain on a regular basis. So that has quality and quantity controls, because at the overflow to that system is a rain garden. So some storm-ready tips at work. Prevention, of course, is a lot cheaper than dealing with problems. So for eaves, troughs, foundations, and trees, that's going to be pretty much the same tips as at home. With parking lots, you want to keep your storm drains cleaned out so you're not getting flooding. You're going to want to get in touch with the folks at the Smart About Salt program. They're a not-for-profit charity, quite reasonably priced, and really want to help a lot. If you've got your oil and grit separators in your parking lot, you can get them inspected once a year and cleaned out as required, and that will also get you a credit. Parking lot sweeping is another thing you can do to maintain quality. With your roof, you have to keep a good eye on those membranes in your flat roof. Are they cracking? Are they splitting? Is there a risk that they're going to be causing flooding? Keep them in good repair, and also with your drains, make sure that they're free of debris so they're not going to back up on you. Now, there are a lot of opportunities to learn. One of the first things you can do is drop by REEP House for Sustainable Living. It's at 20 Mill Street in Kitchener. We're open from Saturdays from noon to 4. We have a certified energy advisor on staff who can answer any of your questions about energy, water, or stormwater. The site there features a lot of different things, but related to stormwater, we've got a rain garden, we've got rainwater harvesting that's also plumbed in to flush our toilets. We've got permeable paving, we've got a cistern, and we've got an infiltration gallery. So please join us on Saturdays, or you can also check out the website to get a virtual tour of the site. Another great thing you can do is just start learning. So you can go on our website, reepgreen.ca/rain. We've got a variety of local case studies of what challenges people did have, what solutions they came up with. We have qualified contractor lists that will help you get started with a variety of the challenges that you're facing. We have some advanced rain workshops that are coming up in the winter. So we'll have 2 case studies that will help you figure out how to apply for credits yourself. And we'll have a more in-depth workshop about some of these exciting low-impact development or stormwater management solutions that you could consider for your site. Something I really must not forget to mention is that we also offer rain business visits. We'll have a certified rain guide come to your site and look at some of the challenges that you're having, the opportunities there are for change, and we'll help you apply for stormwater credits. We are presently taking waiting list names for that service. We will have a best practice tour on the very end of March that will give people the opportunity to see some of these excellent best practices in action. You'll not only hear about what went well, but also some of the challenges that were involved in, changing policy, changing minds in order to get these things installed. What were some of the maintenance challenges? How were they overcome? It'll be a really interesting tour. I invite you to sign up. And we have demo projects. If you're interested in participating, we have $4,000 to help you participate with signage, consulting fees, materials, and we also do extensive promotion of those demo projects. If you're interested in applying through City of Kitchener or City of Waterloo, you can get in touch with me, or you can get in touch with Angela or with Matt at the City of Kitchener. They're very helpful, very knowledgeable, and they really want you to apply for credit and do as much as you can to protect the quality and quantity of the water that flows from your site. So in order to fulfill the last step and to get your 5% stormwater credit, you've now listened to the webinar. What you're going to need to do is write an email to me at rain@reepgreen.ca and just say that you saw the webinar, and I will send you a feedback survey, and that is taken so that we can continue to improve our service and we can see what you learned. And then once you're done that, I will send to you the posters that you need to circulate and any simple documents that you need to submit to the city. It's really very simple. It shouldn't take too long. So I want to thank everybody for joining me today, and I really hope that you found some interesting information that you'll be able to apply at work as well as at home. Now, we know from the presentation that each property presents a challenge. Each property contributes pollutants and volume to the system, but we also on each of our properties have the opportunity to be part of the solution. And together, we can work together to leave a grand legacy for our kids. Thank you very much for your attention, and I really look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. That was awesome, Cheryl. So as she mentioned, there's a survey for you to apply and get your credits, and if you need any assistance with that, feel free to shoot me an email. We're always happy to pass on the information. Have a great day, everyone.